almost all set here, streaming up on YouTube. Okay, we are live. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. This is the open meeting of the Community Preservation Committee, the CPC, and it's being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law March 29, 2023. All members of the CPC are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The act allows the CPC to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. I need to take a roll call of those present. Would you answer in the affirmative when I call your name? Jeff Leland?
Here.
Todd Helwig?
Here.
Andy Clark? Andy, you're muted. Hello, Andy?
Here, sorry about that.
No problem. Ray Carlson?
Here.
And John Campbell is here. We have a quorum, and also joined by Lori Connors, our town planner.
I'm here.
Thank you. We have one new arrival just at this moment. Millie, if you can hear me, would you say that you're here?
I am here.
Nice. Hi.
Hello.
First order of business is a quick vote by the committee. We had failed to close the open hearing at our last meeting in February. We need to take the official motion of closing the hearing, so I will need someone to make a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Thank you, Todd. Any second?
Second.
Thank you, Millie. Roll call vote quickly to close the open hearing. Jeff?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Ray was not here, so she can't. John, yes. Millie?
Yes.
Okay, very good. That was sufficient. And in the meantime, we
Leslie's
welcome
away.
member
Sorry, I was
Leslie Harrison.
Leslie.
Hello, Leslie, you with us? Hello, Leslie, if you can hear us.
I heard her say
Can you
yes.
not hear me?
You're a
Can you
little
not-
frozen.
I had a hard time connecting.
Yep, coming through a little sketchy, but it's okay. We'll let you get it up to speed, crank it up. I know how it goes.
I am sketchy, so matches my personality.
Didn't mean it personally. First order of business, I'd like to welcome our new member, Ray Carlson, now representing the Housing Authority.
Hi,
Hey,
Ray.
Ray.
Hello, Ray.
Hello.
Great to have you. Second order of business is reorganization. I was told this is kind of a tradition at boards to offer any reorganization. I guess that would mean leaders such as chair, vice chair. I would open the floor for any said suggestions.
I nominate John to be chair.
Second.
God,
Second.
I was
Move.
afraid of that.
Move to close the nominations.
Congratulations and
Second.
condolences.
It's more
Yeah.
than one motion at once. It's very confusing to the chair. I believe Leslie made a motion. And
That is
was that
correct.
Jeff who seconded?
Yes.
Jeff, who just wanted to move the meeting along as fast as possible, fully understood. Any discussion of who should be the chairman? Hearing none, roll call vote. Jeff,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Andy Clark,
Yes.
Ray Carlson,
Yes.
Millie,
Yes.
Leslie. She makes the motion and then bows out. Are you there?
I said, yes, thank you. Can you really not hear me?
You didn't just then. And I'll have to vote
Okay.
for myself. Thank you all for voting me back in. I'll let you know when I've had enough.
It was a nail biter.
I also vote in approval.
Thank you all. Hello, Peter Martin has also joined us. Welcome, Peter. All right, we got a really full boat. Okay, next order of business is the closing of old.
John,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering if you could do the vice chair, just in case you're indisposed. We need to know who is going to run the meetings when I'm not there.
Wow. We've tried before. We can try again. So we'll open a discussion. Is anyone willing to serve as vice chair in the capacity just described as by Lori? I'll open the floor for motions.
I nominate Ted, Todd, whatever his name is.
It's Ted.
I second
so.
Ted.
His evil twin, Ted. Yeah.
I'll second.
Well. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote to make Todd vice chairman. Jeff,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
reluctantly, Andy Clark,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
John, yes, Millie,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Wow, this is exciting. Are there any other posts we can elect to?
That should do it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for humoring me.
No humor intended. It's just me. Okay, now moving on. We have an item to discuss the closing of old CPA projects. And apparently we needed to be doing this on a yearly basis, but have not. We're joined by Town Finance Director Jason Little. And Jason, would you like to introduce your information and memo?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you, John.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me here tonight. I guess this is kind of a long overdue practice that we should get in the habit of doing. Generally, with capital projects and special articles. Oh, somebody's thanks, Lori.
You're welcome.
Typically, I can communicate, or the accountant can communicate directly with a department when they know a project is complete, and we're doing that on an ongoing basis. Well, with the CPC, there's the added requirement that the CPC notifies the accountant when a project is complete, and that part of the loop typically hasn't been happening as we go along. We print out the reports on a monthly basis and put them into Lori's mailbox, and then typically after a couple of years, I start wondering, well, is this project truly complete or not? And I've gone through the effort of closing the loop by talking to all of the people that these articles appropriated money to, and confirmed with them that their projects were complete as we moved along. So there's a great quantity of them this year. So if we do this annually going forward, it'll be a much simpler process, much less to research and so forth. And going through my article, it's talking about how there's about $300,000 of articles that represent completed projects that can be closed out. The memo also lays out the articles that remain that are continuing. Like I'm not suggesting closing the affordable housing articles because if you recall, there was a proposal a number of years ago to reappropriate money from the Affordable Housing Corporations to set money aside for the White Cliffs development at that point, that proposal at that point in time that didn't end up moving forward. So we're not suggesting closing those. So those are listed out in detail in the memo that's in the packet for tonight. One thing I should say as well, there's the added requirement that the money basically is supposed to, and this is a general municipal finance concept, that when something closes out, it goes back to where it came from. So basically what that means is that if an article was funded with CPA revenues, then the money would go back to the CPA unreserved fund. If it was funded from one of the reserves, then it would go back to one of whichever reserve that it came from. And in this case, there were three articles to be specific, that came from the Historic Resources Reserve. So you see, the majority of these articles did either come from the unreserved, in which case they'd go back to the unreserved fund. And again, to be clear to everybody, they stay within all the CPA articles that are funded from the CPA stay within the CPA, and they go back to the CPA. So they would go back to the CPA unreserved fund balance. So there's 19 articles that have been identified that do that. And then if something was split funded between multiple funds, the remaining funds go back to the source that has the most restrictions. So if it was split between unreserved and one of the reserves, the remaining money would go back to whichever reserve it came from, because that has a stricter source. It's a more defined source. And again, Lori, if you could move forward a couple pages on this, there is just one point I wanted to make.
Pardon me,
on the
Lori, could you
fund
zoom it
balances.
can you zoom your display just a bit as well?
Can I zoom in more?
Yeah, if you're just to fill the screen a little more, at least the way I'm seeing it.
Because it's showing that it should be full screen.
No,
So
it's not so
let me-
much that, but you appear to have it within
that?
your Adobe window, lower right, you can zoom, I think.
Hmm.
Lower right is a plus sign,
Or the right.
lower right, plus sign.
Lower right. Plus
Yeah, the little
sign.
magnifying
I'm
glass.
not getting a plus sign on this.
It's like a little magnifying glass on the lower right margin of the Adobe window. No?
Well, you may be able to see the table I'm talking about, John. If we scroll to the next page, I think that is,
It was mainly for those looking on screen,
you're-
right?
I see what
Okay.
you're saying. That,
yeah.
There you go.
okay. It was blocked by all your photos.
Oh,
Right.
yeah, sorry.
It-
I'm sorry about that. Thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, in which case, I mean, maybe if we go back to the former page, that'll list out the $297,000 of articles that have completed.
There we go.
So the ones above, no action needs to be taken regarding the first listing that shows the articles completed. These are ones that completed themselves by being fully expended, so there's 0 left. The admin fund, I mean, provided there's no further bills to be paid, $36,000 would close out, but there could potentially be more bills. That's just the annual amount that gets appropriated to the admin fund. And that's the only CPA article that closes out without a recommendation of the CPC. So that one has every year that annual appropriation has been closed out as we go along, and returns. Any balance remaining in the admin fund goes back to the unreserved at the end of the year. So again, right now it's $36,000 on the books at the time of the writing of this memo. There may be more bills that have been turned in the meantime. I'm not sure, Lori. You would know better than I would. If anything is in process for those, we still have about a week to go before our run out period for FY25 bills. The deadline of that is reached. So again, that number is a tentative number, but that's what it is as of today.
I have nothing new coming.
Okay. And then scrolling down, these are in articles listed by by those that were appropriated to town departments, where I've talked to the department heads that these articles were appropriated to and confirmed that they're complete. And there were, 275, the majority of the articles that we're closing are related to those. And again, the majority was the town common project that the Public Works Director confirmed was complete. So those funds will return to this unreserved fund. Then the Historic District Commission had a large quantity of articles, although it doesn't amount to more than $8,700 in the end. And I should mention that these numbers that say beginning balance, that's not the beginning balance of the project. That's simply the beginning balance of FY25, which started July of 24. So, I mean, I could look that number up if there's any questions from the committee, but I didn't have that. It would take a lot more effort to go back to the inception of these articles to list out the amount, but not undoable, but it wasn't done for the purpose of tonight. And then there was 4 articles here that are for older projects that are completed, 2 for the church and 2 for the Historic Society. So I communicated with both organizations and confirmed that those are complete as well.
Okay.
And the following page, as we discussed, these are the affordable housing articles or community housing articles that are proposed to continue. And then further below are the other articles that will remain open through the end of the year. I mean, they'll remain open and be carried over to the next year. And that's a much shorter list than should the committee vote to recommend closing the articles from the memo. This will be a much shorter list to manage going forward.
And is that because those are not yet completed?
Correct. Yeah. So as you can see from this list, the headings here, it starts with the beginning balance of the fiscal year. Most of these are showing expenditures in the current year, so there's evidence that there's some activity. There's encumbrances, meaning that there's contracts that are outstanding that are unpaid or uncompleted. So these are very much underway as the timing leads to. So it would make sense to carry these forward, and these were all confirmed to be continuing with the organizations that they were appropriated to.
So Jason, this is John. I have a few questions on some line
Sure.
items, if it's okay now.
Sure,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, starting on the page that's showing, I just have some confusion as to things that are open, and I didn't look back at all the different articles yet. But for instance, the town offices line, beginning balance in FY25 of $350.
Correct.
And that article goes back to the 2012 town meeting.
Correct.
So I forgot to look it up, but I thought this was for some physical improvements to the town hall building that qualified under historic.
Yeah,
And some of those things were done, but there's this much still available? I'm
correct. Yeah,
confused.
John, I don't know if this article dovetailed with another one that came out of that was in the regular capital plan. And that was in the neighborhood of $850,000. And those projects they were started under one of the previous administrators, and those were proposed to improve the building that I'm sitting in tonight, the 63 Main Street building. And I believe the $350,000 was designed to handle the HVAC portion of the building renovations here. And it was looked at as one project in full. And it was delayed based on I think the decision that they were going to look at for West Main Street as an option for the town hall at the time, and it truly was delayed from that period of time.
Hmm.
So there's been efforts to renovate this building here, knowing that that it's a likelihood that we're going to be here for another 10 years or so at least.
So in this case, and you've talked it over with staff, there's an expectation that items of work could still be done that qualify under CPA. Are they still the ones defined by the original?
Yeah,
application?
It's still the same work as being conceived of under the application from what I understand.
Okay.
It's just a very lengthy delay that occurred.
There's no time limit on the application. If the funds aren't used, don't they have to come back to us to revisit? I thought it was 2 years.
I didn't read the application in this case, to be honest with you.
Well, I think in point of fact, when we have a funding agreement with a source, with a recipient outside of the town, we provide a time limit, as Millie stated, but I guess this being
Yeah, I don't think there is one. I mean,
inside,
to
yeah.
that point,
and-
yeah, we typically write that into the funding contracts with the outside agencies if we're going to give money to an outside corporation or third party. But
I did just look up the old article, and as you said, it was the article. It was Article 37 was $350 to upgrade the original town hall heating system, and it was adding to $802,000 of funds that was, I assume it was approved in Article 24.
Correct.
And so, I'm not sure if some of that's still available too, but
yeah, correct. It is that there's work being undertaken under that article as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
That-
Well,
Sean, I know that the staff, DPW, has been going around the building with consultants. So that project is now active. So they're planning on going forward with it, I believe, this year, thankfully. I, for one, am very excited to see improvements, as I have a window unit that is so noisy that I can't turn it on because I can't hear anybody at the desk nor people on the phone.
well, I'm glad it might still get put to use, and I suppose if the committee reviews these things more often, we'd have less question going forward. So while I have another one on a line above this table in the section that is in the list of those that you'd like us to vote on, I think it's the previous page.
Sure.
Yeah, keep going up. There you go. Town department articles. I have a question on the first line item, DPW Church Street Bridge. I have a memory that we approved the application, but that it was determined the bridge could not be repaired with materials that would qualify as historic restorations or replicas. And so I thought that ultimately the project was not undertaken with CPA. Do you have any more knowledge on that?
John, I could look that up for you. I think that, I mean, that's the remaining balance. I think there were some funds that were expended for that.
Okay. Because I may be a little bit off in memory. It struck me as odd. And I have a similar question on the fifth line splash pad. I have a memory again that Rec decided not to go forward with that. Does anybody else remember? And am I just out of it?
We financed 1 year of splash pad. This is like a second, people coming back for something else, like some other bench
Well, this-
or equipment.
This was 2013. And
So John, just to answer your question about the first article, I mean, I don't have specific knowledge of what work was specifically done, but I can tell you the numbers behind it. And that article was originally $50,000. And it looks like back in 2012 and 2013, about $35,000 was spent. So that's the balance of the 50 there for the Church Street Bridge. The splash pad I can look up too.
Weren't they gonna build like a pavilion and then they decided for some reason they couldn't do it because they needed like a structural engineer or something and they abandoned it?
I remembered something similar, but
Yeah, that may have been the expenditure that work was put into engine for the splash pad article. That was $15,000 originally, and the total of $3,760 was paid to between a couple different engineering firms, or a designer and an engineer back in 2014.
Jason, I have a question. Maybe
Sure.
you said it, I didn't catch it, but are these that haven't been closed out, is that balance represented in the sort of the progress report that you give us every year? Or are this is number that is not included, what sort of invisible cash that is not, that we didn't know was in our reserves?
Correct. It's not in your reserves yet. So,
Because it was encumbered because the project wasn't closed out.
Correct. Yeah. It's held outside of what was considered available balances. It's within the fund. It's there, but it's not part of what was considered to be, re-awarded or anything yet. So if we scroll to before, I don't want to preclude anybody asking any more questions about what's on these pages. So if we, the final page of this memo has a table that I was talking about, Andy, and I think it will answer that question of how this would work.
one more page.
Yeah, if you could go to the fourth page. Right. Yeah, so this is typically one of the tables that's used when I come back. And I'm going to come back in the fall or early winter to talk about the fund balances once we've closed the books definitively for the year. But these are some of the mechanics of how things happen. We budget revenues, so we budgeted $820,000 conservatively. On the books today, again, we haven't closed yet. This number could change slightly, but the actual revenues collected were $1.1 million. So that differential between 820 and $1.1 million will add to the unreserved fund balance. You see the 36, and I'm looking at the column to the far right on the screen. The $36,000, that's what the admin was. That number may go down if further bills are uncovered as we go through the closing process. Sounds like it probably won't change. At town meeting this year, projects were voted from the unreserved fund and the affordable housing reserve. So that will again deplete the affordable housing to zero with the town meeting appropriation, and then that will reduce the town meeting. The town meeting appropriations will reduce the unreserved fund balance. The line below that represents the articles. Should the vote go through to close these projects, to recommend closing these projects, it will increase the balances that are available the next time around. So basically, that's a preview of what's available in fund balances in the fall for your next round of awards or recommendations.
And when does fiscal year 2025 actually end? Is it June or?
June 30th, but
June 30th.
we don't have all the information available to us yet in order to close the books. We have a lot of things to do still, and that typically happens over the summer.
Okay, yeah.
Typically it's September or August or September when we officially. August is unlikely, but generally September or October is when the books are closed for the year.
Okay.
So very good. The good news is, should we approve to close the list you recommend, we're adding to the unreserved fund balance as well as 4,242 to the historical balance.
Correct. Yeah.
And I guess that's good news. Any other questions from the committee on those line items? Basically, there was those at the top of page 2 of your memo. Town department articles to close and historic district articles to close, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I guess the only question I would have is how do we go forward not have this happen? How do we start keeping track of what's closed?
Well, once we have we don't just close the books once a year. We close accounting periods monthly as we go along. We produce a report for the departments. What's timely now is that this will guarantee that this money is available for your next round of considerations and recommendations for the next cycle. If we come back and there's more things that we can confirm are closed, when you folks are having regular meetings, we can bring forward the recommendations to close this. But again, it was kind of an insurmountable task when we had 42 articles. Now that if we only have 20 or fewer to manage, it'll be a much easier process going forward.
Okay, so would they, once projects are complete, is that something you'll notify us?
Yeah. Now, I mean, we have a little bit of added capacity within my office to be able to dig deeper into some of these issues. So we'll be able to handle it more proactively going forward.
Okay.
And now that I'm aware of the projects that are outstanding, it'll be easier for me to communicate with Jason when a project closes.
And this includes projects from this year's town meeting.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, this doesn't have, I don't believe this listing has this year's town meeting articles listed because we haven't started that year yet.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Right. Okay. Jason further helped us by writing the proposed motion. Does anyone care to?
It's on the
take
first
that
page, Lori,
advice?
if that helps.
You know what, John? I move the Community Preservation Committee approve closing the 22 Community Preservation Act articles totaling $297,664.30 effective June 30, 2025, and notify the town accountant as presented in the Finance Director's July 3rd, 2025 memo.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Peter. And the second came from Todd?
Jeff.
Jeff.
Jeff, I'm sorry. Excellent. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote to close out those items as in the motion. Jeff,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Andy Clark,
Yes,
Ray, I'll skip you because I don't think it would apply to you. John C., yes. Millie,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
and Peter.
Yes.
Excellent. Jason, thanks for putting it all together. There's a lot of
Thanks.
work
Thanks
there,
for
but
having
it'll
me
help.
here, and I appreciate you folks meeting. And such a, I don't know if you met specifically for this, but I appreciate you meeting
We
and,
did.
We did.
and adding me,
100%.
adding me to the agenda. I appreciate it. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
I look
time as
forward to
always.
seeing you in the fall again.
Thanks, Jason.
Great, we do too. Take
All
care.
right. Thanks a lot.
Very good. So moving on, our next item is the consideration of the funding agreement for Village Drive Affordable Housing Project. It is 6:36. This was posted to the committee. I personally had viewed it in advance with Rick and Ron Bonney, and it's gone through the Housing Authority. Ray, would you like to speak to any items in it?
There is one change on the very last page. The person who's going to be signing for NAHC will be George Pember and not me, because I serve on both the Housing Authority and NAHC. And the attorneys thought that that would be a better idea to have somebody outside rather than somebody attached to both of the committees.
That makes sense.
So that's the only change I have.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The body of the agreement was crafted to be similar to previous affordable housing agreements, adding in the specific dollars and value to the project that we brought forth to town meeting and was approved by the voters. There's one request that is a little outside the norm, and that was the request that the term be allowed to extend to 3 years rather than traditional 2.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not mistaken, Ray, request came through Ron Bonney just due to the nature of getting things lined up and uncertainty of the state matching funds that he hopes to have, that he wanted the security of having more time. Is that about accurate?
Yes, things with the state move a lot slower than we would like them to. So this gives us a little bit of a cushion in case some of those scenarios that you just mentioned happen. So instead of the usual 2 years, we're asking for 3.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Opening up to the floor, any other question on the agreement or questions for Ray from the Housing Authority?
No.
This is a similar agreement we used when we built the houses on Main Street with Habitat. It's the same kind of agreement.
Excellent. Hearing no other input, could we entertain a motion to approve the agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Millie, second by Jeff.
John, does it need to be approved with the one correction or one change?
I guess that would be accurate to do that. Yes, if you could rephrase,
Do you want me to do
Sure.
that?
if you don't mind, please.
Yes, we'd like to edit the funding agreement to show George Pember as the signer for the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation.
Yeah, Millie, would you just mind amending your motion to include what was just said?
I propose to amend my motion to approve George Pember as signing.
I'll second that amendment.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote for this. Jeff,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Andy Clark,
Yes.
Ray Carlson,
Yes.
John, yes. Millie,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
thanks very much. Check that one off as well. Okay, we're at 6:40 PM. We're doing well. The next item, and frankly, the one after it, will likely roll into it at some point. It is regarding the White Cliffs Design and Demolition Project, an application that was approved at town meeting, and historic restriction requirements that go as part of that. Lori, you want to start a little overview of where you think things stand?
Sure. Just
Thank
an
you.
update in case folks haven't been following the select board meetings. The select board met with the two applicants, the folks who had submitted proposals for the White Cliffs property on, I think it was June 23rd, and John Campbell went to that meeting. And one of the proposals was for an event space. So it's from a firm that already owns 4 different event venues in New York and Connecticut. I have met with them myself on a couple of occasions, and they certainly seem to know what they're doing. They have a breadth of experience. And then the second applicant was, I think it was called Gardens of Hope. And what they are interested in doing is constructing 36 units of housing for folks with autism, I believe, and their families. And also using the mansion and the grounds for a variety of commercial uses, including a speakeasy was mentioned, doing a greenhouse and a couple of other uses, I believe offices. So they haven't had any experience doing this prior. So I know there were a number of questions from the select board regarding that. So the select board did the interviews on the 23rd. I believe they are set to announce, and so they had to rank the proposals, so the written proposals themselves. Once the proposals are ranked, they're able to open up the financial proposals. So I don't believe that they have done that as of yet. So they will announce their choice, I believe, at the next meeting. And then that will start the negotiation process. So one of the issues with advancing the design project is that if there is going to be a party that's going to lease one of these buildings or own one of the buildings, then we really need to understand what they'd want to do with the additions, whether they want the additions demolished or whether they don't. Like, for example, I know the event venue had mentioned retaining the kitchen, so demolishing everything else, but keeping the kitchen. So that is obviously very important information that would need to go into the RFP when we select a designer to pay for that study. I do know, particularly with the event venue, that when they were interested in White Cliffs, they wanted the town's assistance. So they had put into their proposal that they were looking for about $1 million worth of grant assistance. So they are still interested in having the town proceed with this project for the demolition of the additions. I had also spoken with them about the underutilized properties grant program, and they would be eligible for up to $1 million for that. And I had met with Mass Development with Stephanie to discuss the underutilized properties grant and our White Cliffs application and why we didn't receive funding before. And they had said that if the town had a lessee that was interested in either creating affordable housing or creating jobs, then it would be a great proposal that would really be competitive for that grant program. So the long and short of it is that I haven't pulled the trigger on the RFP for the design services yet because I don't fully understand their expectations, what they want to do with the building. So if this Board of Selectmen makes that decision this month, then those conversations can take place right away. And the intent is to issue the RFP shortly thereafter. Because of course we are interested, I know they're interested in going forward, not sitting idle on this project. So I guess we're taking a wait and see approach. The historic restriction part of it was also a discussion that came up with Stephanie, the town administrator, last week. And they are interested in pulling the trigger on the preservation restriction. They want to go to town meeting in the fall to ask to lease the building to whichever one is the proposal that's selected by the select board. And the intent would be to have town meeting approve the preservation restriction at the same time. So it will take a few months to negotiate the preservation restriction. So they are hoping that the CPC would see fit to pay for those professional services of a historic preservation attorney to help the town prepare that preservation restriction. So I forwarded to you folks the correspondence from Stephanie Bacon. She has reached out to a couple of preservation experts, including Stuart Saginaw. She also reached out to Preservation Worcester, I understand, to see if they would be interested in holding the preservation restriction. So the estimate for the attorney costs is in the realm of $15,000. So I thought that it would make sense to give a little bit of a buffer there in case it was more than $15,000. This is a complicated property, as you know. So I had put on the agenda, this was an amendment, last minute amendment that came forward on Friday to add that line item requesting $20,000 of the admin money to fund the services of an attorney to help the town prepare the preservation restriction. Happy to answer any questions.
So Lori, a comment from me. The first question regarding the last part of what you just spoke about would be using admin funds. And we've had some guidance from the Community Preservation Coalition on the appropriate use of admin funds. And while this is not at the front of a project that we're considering, it still seems to me to be well within the business of the committee for information that we'll need most likely for another application, not knowing which recipient may get chosen, nor town meeting approves it. There are certainly things we don't know, but if this is a professional service that we're going to need as part of the process, seems to me to be within an applicable use of the admin funds.
Oh, and also I just wanted to add that there will likely be an application in November for your review for the cost of the preservation restriction, holding the preservation restriction. So the estimates for that cost are anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. So $50,000 to $100,000. So I know Stephanie is looking into particular folks like Preservation Massachusetts, Preservation Worcester. There were a couple of other names batted about as being the appropriate party to hold the preservation restriction, and they do require like an endowment to cover their costs of maintenance in perpetuity. So it's like a one-time endowment.
So, I guess I want to open it up to any other committee member to add their comments, but the thing that jumps out to me is that we don't know the scope yet of the renovations that the chosen applicant might require. We don't really know the full scope of the demolitions yet, because that's pending sort of it. And then I would think if you're going to hire a professional to write the preservation restriction, you want them to quote their costs based on a scope. So I think your request is reasonable, but and I don't think it's the business of this committee to go through it, but I would we would want to get the message to you and staff that, that part of the question needs to be answered first, if I'm making sense.
As far as you want to know the scope of the demolition prior to approving the money to negotiate the preservation restriction, is that what you're saying?
Well, it's related, but it's more like we've never defined as a committee or as a town what parts of the mansion are to be preserved. You're able to write a preservation restriction around those those requirements within reason, of course. And I think Mass Historical ultimately wants to weigh in on it. So we're at a point now where we may have a partner in the building, but they may have some say in which parts they're going to use, which parts they're not. So in other words, you wouldn't expect you to have just a broad stroke of preservation restriction. You would write in the specific requirements. Since no one yet has proposed what those might be, that's kind of what I'm getting at. And I think it relates to which RFP applicant goes forward and whether, the town then negotiates with them. That's what's making sense to me. I don't know if anybody else sees it differently. Feel
Well,
free
I
to
would
chime in.
think that it would be a negotiation between the town, the Historic District Commission, the Northborough Historic District Commission, and the Massachusetts Historic District Commission.
But
So
Yeah.
I would think that absolutely, personally, I would like to have the Northborough Historic District Commission be part of that conversation.
does the historic preservation cover non-historic parts of the building? I didn't think it did. And I thought the additions and the kitchen were not to be covered under that. I could be wrong.
No, I do not envision that the additions would be included within the preservation restriction. For the simple fact that the Massachusetts Historic Commission wanted those additions removed
Right.
in order for the property to qualify for listing.
Right. So I don't think they would have been included in the historic preservation estimate. If that answers any questions.
Yeah, I think that the major concern is that, of course, they're preserving the historic elements of the building, you
Yeah.
know, what's significant, like the stained glass windows,
Yeah,
like the original ceilings, the fancy woodwork on the first and second floors, stuff like that.
so the estimate would
Fireplaces.
basically be based only on those pieces.
Yeah, and it still has to be negotiated. Like right now, we don't even know the party that there's still an unknown.
Mhm.
And, you know, I kind of hesitated about bringing this forth before you at this point when there was still a big question mark as to who the party would be.
Okay, yep,
But the concern was that the next meeting would likely be in September, October timeframe.
mhm,
And they really wanted to pull the trigger on getting the attorney started and having the conversations take place with like Mass Historic and the Northborough Historic District to get moving.
mhm.
Because of course town meeting would likely be in October.
Oh, okay, that one.
So Lori, just so I'm clear, so the $20,000 would cover not just the drafting of the historic restriction, but the negotiation of it with all the parties?
That's correct. It's just to hire the attorney to
Yeah.
do the preservation restriction.
Yeah, yeah. I can't
So the
imagine. the number would-
negotiation, all of those conversations, of course, will take place. Whoever is awarded of course, if one of the proposers are not selected, or then the conversation's kind of moot. But
Mhm.
if one of them is selected, the conversation needs to take place as to what they want to do. And okay, we want to protect X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Does that work for you? You know, is that going to be limiting to you? Or maybe you want us to protect X and Y. Is that something the town can live with?
Yeah.
And then, of course, all of this has to go to town meeting. So town meeting will ultimately be approving the historic preservation restriction as well as the lease or the sale of the property.
I'm just trying to get my handle around whether the $20,000 engagement handles or covers all of that work, not just the drafting, but the discussions as well.
I think that some of the discussions are going to take place without the attorney being present.
Okay.
So
That's a good
Lori,
question.
oh, sorry.
I apologize. It just kind of chimed in the last part that Peter said. It's a good point because on the one hand, the chosen expert attorney could be part of discussion of, helping to facilitate what's included and what isn't. You would think the person wants to become knowledgeable with the building if they haven't already. But I fully understand some conversations would take place before that, but you'd want to get this person or firm in the middle of it so that they know what they're writing into the document.
It's a no greater than number, right? We're not going to have mission creep and end up
Yeah, I
paying
think it's
$50,000.
right. It just kind of comes back to the reason I was questioning the amount is only that we don't overspend or underspend for the fee because we don't know what we want. Maybe in my head I'm thinking if there's too much discussion and too much delay in defining what's going to happen, then the attorney fees keep going up.
I see.
But anyway, I'll be quiet again. 'Cause
Lori, is
I
the
interrupted you, Millie. I'm sorry.
Lori, is the consultant the same as the attorney? Because when I read this information from Stephanie, she mentions a conversation with Stuart Sanganor, who recommends a historic preservation consultant to help guide the work. Is that the same as the attorney?
It is.
It is, okay.
So the ask is 20 Gs as a budget for the consultant lawyer to, as for their fee to negotiate on behalf of the town and its entities, the historic commissions, the select board and things like that. And so this would be paid from our CPC administrative fund. And that would be, and if there's more, well, then select people got to come up with some cash or something like that. And if it's less, it stays in our administrative funds. That's the bottom line on this, right?
Correct. So
Okay.
what I'm looking for from you is essentially authorization to spend up to $20,000. If for some reason it was $21,000, then I would come back to you and I would ask for an extra $1,000.
But we've done something like this, haven't, I mean, Todd or John, you would know better. We've done this when we've done other things for open space things, like we funded it so that they can go get a survey or some kind of check on the deeds and things like that, on the historic ownerships, things like that. So it's pretty analogous to some of that work that we've had done before, isn't it?
It's certainly similar business. In the land purchases that we've had covered by a conservation restriction, it's happened differently. The writing of the conservation restriction might have happened, or they used a boilerplate, and it might have started from the agency that was going to hold it, such as SVT, or in the most recent case, DCR, and working with our town conservation agent. But it's certainly similar business, yes. So
Yeah,
I think you're on.
that's a lot.
I think yeah, you're on the right track.
It's a lot simpler component.
were.
I mean,
Yeah.
the agreements there and the things are much simpler than what we've got going on here, especially when there is an
Absolutely.
entity that's going to want something from us in terms of, hey, I love the staircase, but we're going to move it over to the back or something like that, or something, but so I just wanted to make sure I understood. Lori says it's an approval for a budget that allows her to contract the guide as soon as the select board chooses a path forward.
Correct.
And you're saying we don't have a path forward or a person or anything else. Why are we agreeing for the money?
No. Me personally, I was just maybe bringing it too far ahead. So I'll stand by Lori's more simplified request.
Well, I guess one thing I would just, and Peter can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the more time you give your lawyer to chew on things, the more expensive it will become. The shorter the time frame is really what you want to do. $10,000 at $300 an hour, which is your typical municipal rate, is 30 hours of work. So I don't know that it's going to take 30 hours straight time doing nothing else to actually accomplish this. Now, I don't, we can put a cap in it on 20,000, but it'll go to the cap if you give them that number.
I have a question. When the original article was written, wasn't it included to put a preservation restriction on it in the original article? And wouldn't that have been included in the funding then?
The White Cliffs purchase?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a requirement to do a preservation restriction. That was part of the original approval. Of course, there was 2.4 million allocated, as you can see from the information that Jason provided.
Right.
There was about $43,000 left. And I know that they've been using that money for kind of like paying for insurance and security cameras, electricity, so the annual expenses. So there is some money in there, but I don't know if it's already been spoken for specifically. I know when I spoke with Stephanie on Friday, she was like, oh man, now I'm gonna have to find this money
Mhm.
somewhere and I don't have it currently. So that was how the conversation started about approaching you folks for it. And typically the process is we go out to the attorney. So this would be, so we have a municipal council, Copeland and Page. This would not be within their typical realm of expertise. So the idea is to go out to an attorney who is an expert in dealing with historic properties and historic preservation restrictions. So what we typically do is we reach out to various folks. We need to get at least 3 quotes for a cost like this. And we give them a scope of work, and then they respond to the scope of work, and they provide us with their expertise, and they provide us with a quote. And then because it is a service, you don't necessarily have to go with the lowest bidder. You go with the qualified, the one that you feel is most qualified. So the thought with the $20,000 is it could be less than that. They could give a quote for $12,000, or it could be $13,000, or it could be $19,000. It would just give a little bit of a buffer. If you want to go with the 15,000, if that makes you feel more comfortable, then certainly any amount would be gravy at this point. Because right now they just don't have that money in the budget.
My concern is you're gonna get the same question at town meeting when people are reviewing this and saying, well, wasn't that originally in the budget? None, and why isn't it now? And why are we doing more? But
Well, at
Well,
that
let's-
time, we're not going to be asking them for $20,000. We're gonna say, here's a historic preservation restriction. Do you like it or not? Like the format, it will be finalized at that point.
Oh, so-
And
so-
they'll say, here are the parameters. This is the written language of the preservation restriction. This is what we want to preserve. Stained glass windows, these built-ins, etc. So that's the goal, is to have the preservation restriction finalized and ready to be approved by town meeting by the fall town meeting.
prior to them approving the amount, because they don't have to approve the amount?
No, because it's
No.
through our,
Because it's, you folks have the power to approve the
it's
amount.
through our administrative fund.
Oh,
This is
Okay.
just the.
I'm
the,
sorry, I
this is-
lost that.
Yeah. I guess I'd like to focus on this agenda item and determine if we want to vote on it, which is really use of the admin funds, yes or no, for the historic preservation expert. And this is not with regard to the cost to hold that restriction, which I guess I'd like to bring into the next line of discussion, which is future funding requests. And it's certainly not any additional cost that may come in a CPA application. That's, so with regard to the request to use the admin money, any
want a
further
motion?
debate on it, and or anyone want to provide a motion?
I've moved to spend the $20,000 request as Laurie has made.
I'll
Second,
second that.
Motion from Todd, second from Jeff.
Andy had it.
Andy first. Fighting for it, okay. Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote for the admin money request. Jeff,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Andy,
yes,
Ray,
Yes.
John says yes. Millie,
Yes,
Leslie,
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Good discussion on it. I know that Jeff said he had to leave, so trying to get that vote done. I appreciate it. But I will transition, if you don't mind, to the next agenda item is a discussion of potential funding requests. So the one point I wanted to make about the holding of the preservation restriction, and in the analogy of things we've done for land acquisitions, we've usually been able to negotiate with one of our land partners to hold it. I can remember New England Forestry doing one. SVT has certainly done it. And in this last case, DCR has done it for the Whitney Street property. So there's willing partners in the land space that have sometimes stepped in the absence of them actually contributing to the purchase or granting money, the exception being the nice extra contribution we got from DCR. Maybe in the realm of historic preservation, there are organizations that would be somewhat also benevolent rather than us assuming it's a big number. But that's an area that I think the Historic District Commission or other representatives in town could explore to see what we really require. You know, maybe it's less money than we think. And I anticipate that from what you were talking about, Lori, that might have to be a separate application, or it might have to be bundled with something else once we know maybe the scope of what the RFP recipient might be looking for, should the select board decide to move forward with that.
Yes, one of the discussions has been that because it's a building, it's a little bit more complicated than open space that may be forested. Because of course you have an active user of the building. And obviously things break and maybe they want to do repairs, and so it does require annual inspections of the facility. And sometimes they have to go out more often than that. If there's like a proposal to do some improvements, replace windows and the like, then they would have to make a special appointment to go out to review it and provide guidance. So, but
If we,
hope springs eternal. Maybe there is somebody out there who'd be willing to do it for free.
so Lori, I thought I saw something about the Northborough Historic Society could do it.
I had heard that they thought that this would be over their heads.
That's different than that they could do it. I guess the second thing is maybe two other second things. If we sell it to the applicant, we don't need to do this, correct? It's only if we lease it. Because if
So
we sell it,
the preservation restriction needs to be done regardless.
Yeah.
But the maintenance of the preservation restriction, well, that has to be defined as part of the preservation restriction. So the town would want, even if the town intends to sell it, maybe that is something that could be negotiated as a term of sale. But that would be with the selectmen, that would be part of their approval process, I would imagine.
my recollection is, so if you sell it, because you're trying to separate the holder of the restriction from the owner of the real estate. So if the holder of if you sell it to this applicant, then the town could continue to hold the restriction and enforce it against the owner. That would, I think, avoid this problem.
Well, like
Well,
I
it's an
said,
interesting way of looking at it.
I've been told, I'm not quite sure who this came from, but that it would be over the heads of the local entity. So
Well,
it
this
would
is,
be
it could be the
somebody who
select
would
board.
have to be knowledgeable about the Department of the Interior standards for preservation of historic buildings. So it wouldn't be
It's not,
like
not,
the Historic District
not
Commission.
availability, but it's capacity to do it.
No, Todd's scenario is that hypothetically, if the town sells the building, then the town can hold a restriction because they're no longer the owner, but the preservation goes with the building. So that was just a hypothetical, I believe, Todd, that you were trying to bring up.
Yeah, that is a way to save the money. And the other question is, are you asking for us to pay an endowment out of CPC?
Not at this time. That wasn't part of the discussion. Possibly there may be an application that comes up in November to pay the endowment.
Can
It's
we
too
do
early
that?
to say. This is a wish list of potential projects. So that may come down the pike or it may not. Right now, it's too early to tell because we don't know what's going to happen with that property. We don't know who the select board is going to select. We don't know what's going to happen at town meeting. So I'm just saying that there may be a project in the fall. There may not be.
Understood. Much unknowns.
Yeah.
And you touched on the other part of that, which was, well, in a prior application, it was made clear in that prior applicant's proposal, they were looking for X amount of CPA money to contribute. In the two current respondents, it was less clear. And maybe in the financial component portion that, as you say, may not have been opened yet, there will be some clarity to that they're looking for a contribution. Now, you did say one of the applicants discussed maybe wanting help to get grants in the neighborhood of 1 million. That's different than CPA funds, but maybe they intended that to be under the same umbrella. What do you think?
Yeah, that was where the conversation went, was that the underutilized properties grant would be a good resource. And
okay.
Certainly I've already applied for one of those for that grant for the White Cliffs. So I had mentioned that I'd be happy to assist both applicants with that application. So that would be grant writing assistance as well as letters of support from applicable boards and committees.
If I recall, when you tried that before, Lori, since there was no defined use, you didn't have much chance or got shot down, right? Where in this case, if we have a known use, you're going to qualify for it much better. Is that true?
Yeah, so at that time that I had applied for it, we were talking about town hall with a community space in the mansion for meetings and special events. And they did not believe that that was a competitive project because, of course, town hall wouldn't be eligible. And it wasn't really defined what that community space would be. They want jobs and homes. That's what they want. That's what they want to fund.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. Anything else that anyone wanted to bring up regarding White Cliffs and future participation through CPA? All right, well, I guess we can move on from that. The other item we had on the agenda as a potential funding request was with regard to the Blake and Pierce Street downtown streetscape that Lori is obviously fluent with. And we've talked a little bit about this at the latest presentation in the town at the town library, and a little bit offline about where a CPA application might fill a gap. And then maybe Lori, you go over the status of your grants and where you think that might apply.
Yeah, so I applied for 2 grants. I applied for $756,000 from the MVP program. That's Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant Program. They fund mostly climate change mitigation. And then I applied for a $500,000 grant from the Complete Streets Grant Program. So I should find out about funding within the next 2 to 3 months. So I'm hopeful that I will get at least one of those grants. Of course, grants are never guaranteed. It all depends on how many people apply and what the pool of projects is. So I'm kind of trying to come up with a contingency. If we get both grants, then we're all set. We have reduced the scope of the project by about $800,000. So the scope of the project currently, as presented at the June 30th Community Outreach Workshop, will be fully funded. There's actually a lack of about $10,000, but I think that we can find that between my budget and the DPW budget. So that's great news. If we don't get a grant, the part of the project that I'm most concerned with is Blake Street. And of course, we are proposing some pretty significant improvements to the Pocket Park at the intersection of Route 20 and Blake Street. And the improvements that we're talking about are new landscaping, a new pedestrian plaza, new walkways, some improvements to the perpendicular parking spaces. Anybody who's been down there knows that there's a huge amount of puddling that occurs on a regular basis, pretty much every time it rains. And the puddle stays there until it evaporates because there's no drainage. So I was hoping that if our MVP grant is not successful, if maybe you folks would see that as a project worthy of financing. So it would be, not a huge sum of money, probably in the realm of about $500,000 that I'm talking about. And just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts. They would be, the pergola is something that was mentioned, bike racks. The idea is maybe to approach this project in bite sizes to make it easier for folks to get on board with. But I'd be happy to get your feedback, even if it's what aspects of the project, if any, you think would be worthy of funding, or would there be elements that you would want to be stripped from the project? Whatever feedback, please.
Well, just to open up the discussion, you had asked me a little about it, and I thought that if you are either enhancing a park, an existing park, or you're creating park space, that I believe it could be written as an application to qualify. And I believe there are precedents in other towns for similar programs, but I think it would have to be scoped out around, a specific area. And then, for instance, if you said, I want to enhance the Pocket Park at Blake Street, enhance that, and that's going to include a pergola and seating areas and better walking pedestrian access. I think that's something that could be written as a CPA project, but I don't think you could just pick out a bench or a light. You know, I think we'd have to look at it that way, right?
I think there's gonna be, it would be best if it was packaged in that way. I think if this happens to come before town meeting, there's gonna be some resistance to it in terms of, I thought we took care of this last year or whatever, you know, that sort of, we didn't have money for it then, why do we have money for it now? And the fact that it's coming from a different budget, from a different mechanism, is gonna be lost on most people. It's just gonna be viewed as, we told you we didn't want this anyway. So I think we have to be, it has to be packaged in a way that it seems different or different enough or a component enough that it's not viewed as the thing we didn't want. It's viewed as, oh, look at this thing that we're doing over here. It just happens to be on Blake Street. You know, because I think that it's, you know, it's the same folk at the same meeting with the same arguments. So it would need to be, I think it's better if it's like, hey, we're putting in a pergola over here, we're adjusting this, but this is the scope of our thing. I think then you'll find, or it'll minimize the resistance. I think there's going to be super resistance in the town meeting, not in the town specifically, but in the people that show up at the meeting, that we have to try to navigate for it to be successful.
I think that's a great point, that, you know, maybe not calling this the Blake Street project or calling this something completely different. And not that it won't be recognized, but it certainly will have a much more separated element.
We're the pergola on Blake Street, you know.
The pergola in town.
The town common on Blake Street, you know, that's
Well, that's a good idea. Thank you.
The Pocket Park pergola. Try some alliteration.
We'll have
there.
to think of something clever.
The perfect Pocket Park pergola thing.
Thank you.
Well, I guess let's cross our fingers with regard to your grants and
Yeah.
see where it falls, and, you know, be prepared to get creative in the fall.
Great. I appreciate your feedback.
Very good. Any other input on that agenda item? All right, hearing none, we're getting close. We have 3 other quick items of business. Just earlier today, the coalition sent their annual notice of dues. We typically pay the dues from our admin fund. There's never been a question of that. I think we usually vote on it, so I decided we should do so again. So is this the 2025 to 26 dues, do you know, Lori, or was it from the prior year? Must be
It's
the year coming,
the
right?
new fiscal year. So
Yeah,
it's
okay.
the 26 fiscal year. So it's dated July 1st.
Very good.
So FY 26 annual membership dues, $3,500.
I make a motion that we pay the annual due, the CPC annual dues of 3,500 from the administrative fund.
Second.
Thank you, Andy. And was that Todd or Jeff?
Todd.
Todd, thank you, Todd. Roll call vote to accept paying the dues from admin fund. Jeff,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
John, yes. Millie,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Thank you all. Next, we have old minutes. The agenda has a typo. It's not the March 7th, 2024 minutes, but it is the January and February minutes. Lori
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
realized that we talked about the minutes ad nauseum, which was really my fault, but we never actually voted on them at the January minutes at the February meeting. So, having said that, those minutes were sent to us all. I did find one edit at the top where it says members present. Jeff Leland, do you remember being at the January meeting? I think you were.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure I was either at them or absent, one or the other.
You were absent from February, and that needs to be corrected next, but I didn't have a note of who was at the meeting in January, but I thought you were there. And if that's the case, you need to be listed as members present. So
I
that's
don't
my
think you
only,
were, I
only
watched
edit.
the minutes in February, and I'm pretty sure you were not there.
No, no, January.
I was remote one of them. I think that might have been the January one, but
Okay,
Very good.
I'll
Yeah.
add you to January and list you as absent for February.
I believe
Correct.
that's
We'll,
right.
very good. Let's do the January minutes by themselves. Any other edits people found? Or otherwise a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the January minutes as submitted.
Second.
Thank you, Andy and Jeff. Roll call vote to approve January minutes. Jeff,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Andy.
Yes.
I'll skip over Ray because you weren't there. John, yes. Millie,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Thank you. Now we need to review the February minutes, and it says members present. Andy Clark was included, but you were not there.
No, I was not there.
Members present was John, Leslie, Millie, Peter, Sean, I believe. And that means members absent was Andy Dowd, Todd, Andy Clark, and Jeff. So if you could, we would be adding Andy Clark and Jeff to members absent and taking Andy Clark off of members present.
Got it.
So with those edits, does anyone have any further edits for the February minutes? Hearing none, we could entertain a motion to approve as edited.
So moved.
Thank you, Millie.
And seconded.
Second, Peter, thank you. Roll call vote to approve the minutes. Jeff,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Andy, Clark, no. Ray, no. John, yes. Millie
Yes.
and
Yes.
Leslie
Yes.
and Peter.
Yes.
Thank you, members. All right. We got it all done.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote to adjourn. Jeff,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
John, yes. Millie,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Thank you all. I really appreciate your time coming tonight. We got a bunch of business done and have a good evening.
Yes,
Thank
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 you.
you.
Thank you.
Well,
Good night,
Thank you,
everybody.
Lori.
Thank
Good
you, Lori.
night. Thank you,
Thanks,
Bye,
Lori.
everybody.
Bye.